is the military quarter. The first boss is Instructor Vesuvius. He is a mind control boss. You're going to have 2 to 3 priest mind control tanks to tank the boss. So he spawns with 4 ads called Death Knight Understudies. And they have to be mind controlled by a priest and used to tank the boss. If your warrior tank tries to tank the boss, he's going to get blasted pretty quick. He might not go down immediately, but if he takes more than a few hits, it's going to be a death for sure. So your tanks during this fight are going to be preoccupied tanking the Death Knight Understudies. You got to make sure that you're not using Sunder Armor, you're not debuffing them in any way. So that when it's time to mind control the understudy and tank the boss, they are not at a disadvantage against the boss. So your priest tank is going to mind control an ad. The priests who are doing this have to have at least 3% hit. 3% is the magic number because the ads are level 60. So that's the max benefit you'll get is 3% hit if the ad is level 60. Luckily, priests have hit chance in the shadow tree, so if you don't want to craft Bloodvine and it's viable to get some hit out for your talent tree, that may be the way to go. So the first priest is going to mind control an understudy. They're going to take it to the boss. They're immediately going to taunt and shield wall. Taunt has a 20-second duration. It'll hold the boss. And the shield wall has a 20-second duration and a 30-second cooldown. While this is happening, the second priest is going to mind control another understudy. And once the taunt and the shield wall end, they are going to swap. The second priest is then going to taunt and shield wall and start tanking the boss. The reason we're shield walling is because this boss hits like a truck. And the understudy will survive a few hits from the boss, but once shield wall is down, the understudy is going to start getting slapped. So healers, you guys can heal the understudy that's tanking, but the shadow priest or the priest who's mind controlling needs to make sure that they are they're vocal about where shield wall and taunt are at, and once they're down, you perform a swap just to keep as little damage going out on the understudy tank as possible. So there are 4 understudies, and once the mind control is broken, the mob is immune to mind control for 45 seconds. So you'll mark the understudies, you'll say triangle will go in first, then we mind control square, and then release triangle, then prepare diamond to tank, and you have your rotation. As far as boss mechanics go, he has an unbalancing strike, which is like the melee twin amp, massive damage and reduces defense skill. This is why it's very important to have the shield wall up. And he has a disrupting shout. It's got a 45-yard range. It deals 4k. It burns 4,000 mana, and it deals 8,000 damage, and it stuns you. So this fight is kind of like Firemaw, where you are going to position the boss so that the healers never have to be in line of sight of the boss. The healers can stand still and heal the fight and never be worried that they're going to get hit by a disrupting shout. The casters are going to need to LOS the shout before it goes out, and the melee can stand behind the boss and beat the shit out of him the entire time. The tanks can just be off to the side holding the understudies, and if all goes according to plan, this fight should be relatively straightforward. Depends on your priests to know what they are doing and get the taunts and shield walls right, and if the mind control breaks, having a second or potentially third priest ready to go to pick the boss up so he doesn't start blasting people. So here is the video. This should make the positioning a little more clear.
Resuvius is special because he hurts a lot. So much in fact that he can't really be tanked. Instead, this fight is very similar to Fairlina in the fact that you'll need a priest to mind control his adds to tank him instead. These adds will need to tank the boss right here. This is the line of sight his disrupting shout ability so it doesn't target the ranged of your group. Think of it kind of like Fire Maul way back in BWL. Your player tanks will need to hold the adds right here so they won't be killed. They just need to be kept here so your priest can mind control them and use them to tank the boss. Before this add dies, break the mind control and then have another add move into its place to tank the boss. After one of these adds are mind controlled, there is a 1 minute cooldown until they can be controlled again, so you don't want to put yourself in a scenario where all of the adds are in the middle of this cooldown and you don't have any of them to tank the boss. Just make sure you're keeping this dance going of swapping these adds during the fight, and make sure the boss doesn't move from this location, and it should be pretty easy.
So the melee should not take
Resuvius is special.
should not take any damage from the boss. The positioning on this is a little messed up, I realized, but essentially you're gonna have your the tank is gonna kind of be where the heals are at the top of this ramp, so that the healers can stand further back and continue to heal while maintaining line of sight on the boss so that they don't get hit. And the ranged are going to kind of dance in and out on this wall in order to avoid the disrupting shout. Disrupting shout will only affect people with a mana bar, so unfortunately, I think our ferals and enhancement shamans are going to have to dodge in and out or get, or heal or do something on this fight so that they don't get annihilated by the shouts. But as long as the priest keeps the positioning good, keeps shield wall up, and makes sure that we are we've always got a priest ready to pick up the boss. If the ad dies, we'll be in very good shape. Gothik the Harvester. This is a ad fight. So there are two sides to the room. There's a live side and a dead side. The casters are going to kill mobs on the live side. The melee are going to kill mobs on the dead side because they're immune to magic damage. The mobs are going to spawn first on the live side, and once they die, they're going to respawn as ghosts on the dead side. The live side needs to make sure that they're not killing stuff so quickly that the dead side gets overwhelmed. You can shackle mobs, and you can just tank and hold and wait for the dead side to catch up. I don't foresee it being a terribly difficult task to pace it out. I think the melee does much more damage nowadays than they did back in the day. So I think we will be in good shape with that. The kill order on the undead side is going to be riders, death knights, and trainees. And then it's flipped on the dead side. It's trainees, riders, death knights, and horses. While this is going on, Gothik is going to be up on a balcony. He'll just be hanging out while you're killing ads. Once you've killed enough ads, the boss is going to come down. He's only got 380k HP, which is like he's like an MC boss. That's like Gar or Baron Geddon. It might even be less than them. So he's gonna die really quick once he comes down. Once he gets to a certain percentage, the gate in the center of the room will open, and everyone can just dogpile on him and beat the shit out of him. So here is the video.
This is another fight where your raid will be need to split into two groups. Melee go on the right side, also known as the dead side, and the range go on the left side, which is also known as the living side. This fight is an ad fight. Mobs will spawn on the living side, and once they are killed, their souls will be transported over to the dead side. The mobs on the dead side are going to be a lot tougher than on the living, so it's important that when the raid on the living side kills a bunch of ads, they don't kill them all at the exact same time, which will then overwhelm the dead side. A kill order you should focus on is killing the riders first, the Death Knights second, and the trainees last on the living side. So the priest can actually shackle the riders and they can remain CC'd for the whole fight. This is super helpful because they hit pretty hard, and when they are transferred to the dead side, they can turn into 2 mobs that need to be killed, not just 1. On the dead side, you should focus on killing the trainees first, the riders second, the Death Knights third, and the horses fourth. After all of the waves have spawned, Gothik will teleport down to one side of the room and swap over to the other side after 15 seconds. Gothik himself really doesn't do anything. He will shadow bolt members of your raid, and he has pretty low health. He does have the stacking debuff that reduces the health and mana of your whole raid, but he just has such low health that this really shouldn't be a problem.
Goth?
In the last phase, the gate that divides the rooms will open, and your whole raid can just dogpile on top of it. This is a
This is the timers. This is not terribly important for everyone to have memorized, but there's going to be a few waves of each type of ad. Then they're going to spawn on the other side. You kill them, and that's the fight. The room's just a big rectangle with a gate in the center. The casters are going to hang out in the center of the room, and the melee are going to hang out by the gate and let everything converge on them. Not a terribly complicated fight. You just got to manage your ads, manage the mana, and get through the fight. Make sure you're killing things in the right priority. So 4 horsemen. This is the real bastard fight in this place. You're going to need 8 tanks. All the horsemen are tauntable, and all the horsemen can be disarmed. So the tanks are going to want to make sure that they are taunting, disarming, doing everything they can to reduce the damage that they're taking on these guys. So there are, as the name suggests, there are 4 horsemen. Mograine, Thane, Zeliek, and Blamo. Or Blamau, however you prefer to pronounce it, the namesake of our server. The beautiful lady Blamo.
Blow me.
Yep.
I'm with me. Blow me.
The beautiful lady Blow me. So each of the horsemen has a unique ability. Mograine has Righteous Fire. It's very similar to Ragnaros's I don't know if it's Hand of Rag or Elemental Strike, so whatever the hell it's called. It's just a big fire damage attack. Thane has a Meteor, everyone's favorite mechanic from AQ40. Zeliek has a Holy Wrath, which again is very reminiscent of Cthulhu's Eye Beam. And Lady Blow Me has a Void Zone, which is just going to put poop on the floor that you have to move out of very quickly. The primary mechanic for the Horsemen is that they will mark you. It's a stacking debuff that's applied by each Horseman. So think of it like Fire Maw, except there's 4 Fire Maws. When Fire Maw applies his fire debuff on you, it puts a mark on you. It deals some damage. The next time he applies it, the stack increases. It deals more damage. He applies again, higher stack, more damage. There are 4 different marks, 1 for each horseman. The first mark is applied 20 seconds into the fight, which gives you a little grace period to get the horsemen in position. They're going to be tanked in the 4 corners of the room. The marks are reapplied every 12 seconds, and the marks are going to act as your clock for the fight. Each role, healer, DPS, and tank, are going to need to be paying attention to the number of marks going out and reacting accordingly. The reason this is because you're going to need to position yourself so that you don't get too many marks and get killed. You're going to need to be constantly aware of where you're supposed to be and rotating accordingly so that you don't get too many stacks and die. All of the horsemen shield wall at 50% and 20% HP for 20 seconds. This is to prevent the whole raid just going over in the corner and zerging down one of the horsemen, which I guess we'll see if that becomes a strategy or not, if we're able to DPS through the shield wall. But, we'll see. But the shield wall prevents you from cheesing this fight. Once the horseman dies, they are going to summon a spirit of themselves where they died, and they will continue to mark. So pretty much you have to, even though the horseman's dead, you've got to pretend that they're still in the corner marking, and you need to be aware of your positioning. So what does all of this mean? I'm going to play the video first, and then I will go into much more detail about the positioning.
At the start of the fight, pull each boss to the four corners of the room. Each of these bosses have a special ability, so let's go over them. Mograine is going to be the hardest hitting boss, and he has a 25% chance to do additional fire damage to your tank. Thane has a meteor ability where your raid will need to stack up to split damage. Balamex will spawn void zones that you should not stand in, and Zakel will cast Holy Wrath, which works sort of like Chain Lightning. Healers and ranged DPS will need to stand at max range, and the melee DPS should just not engage with this boss at all. All of these bosses will use a shield wall at 50% and 25% HP, and all these bosses can be disarmed, and when all these bosses die, they will summon a spirit of themselves that will continue casting their mark abilities. The mark mechanic is the most difficult part of this fight, so listen up, this is very important. If you are within 65 yards of any of these bosses, a mark will be put on you. These marks are casted every 12 seconds, and they stack. The more stacks of a mark you have, the more damage is dealt to you, and the more threat is reduced. To explain how this mark mechanic is executed, I'm going to just explain it from the perspective of each of the roles. For the tanks, I'll explain the mechanic from the perspective of an individual tank, and let's name him Rico. Rico will start the fight by pulling Thane and taking him to one of the corners. After 3 marks, another tank will come in and take the threat from Rico. Rico will then move to the safe area for another 3 marks. After those 3 marks are up, he will then go tank Mograine. The reason why he doesn't go back to tank Thane is because he still has Thane's marks on him, since the debuff still hasn't fallen off yet. After another 3 marks of tanking Mograine, he will then go to the safe area again, and then after another 3 marks, he will then go back to tanking Thane. In total, you're going to have 8 tanks all doing the same dance. The DPS of your fight will follow the same exact rotation, but on a group scale. So, for group 1, they'd start at Thane, then after 3 marks they'd move to the safe area, and then after 3 marks they'd go to Mograine, and then after 3 marks they'd go back to the safe area, and then after 3 marks they'd go back to Thane. Your raid will first focus on killing Thane and Mograine first because they are the most difficult bosses. Again, after these bosses die, they will summon a spirit version of themselves, but these spirit versions don't need to be tanked. They're going to just stay here and just don't get near them because they will still be applying marks. For healers, it's a bit different. You should have 3 healers at each boss at all times. How this will work is 1 healer will rotate after each mark, so let's explain this from the perspective of an individual healer. Hannah starts at healing the tank at Thane. After Mark 1 goes out, one of the healers will rotate. After Mark 2 goes out, another healer will rotate. And then after Mark 3, Hannah will then rotate to the next boss. This same pattern repeats, and Hannah will rotate after Mark 6, and then she'll rotate after Mark 9, and this process continues. After Thane and Mograine are dead, this fight becomes considerably easier. As long as your raid stays coordinated and has the endurance to maintain this coordination, you should be good. Look, I get it, this fight is really confusing, and the only way you're really going to understand how it works is by just practicing it. I promise you probably won't kill them on your first pull. Your raid just needs to focus on perfecting this synergy and this intricate dance, and the 4 horsemen should be dead.
Yo, why's the healer gotta be named Hannah, though? Why's the healer gotta be a girl?
Because all healers are girls.
Hannah's a girl.
Okay, so as stated in the video, there are going to be 3 different rotations going on: a healer rotation, a tank rotation, and a DPS rotation. There are going to always be 3 healers at every corner. One of them is going to rotate every mark, and they're going to rotate clockwise from Mograine to Thane to Blomy, and then to Ziliak, and then back to Thane. They're going to heal at the corner until they get 3 marks and then move to the next. As you can see, the healers never go into the safe spot. All healers are always rotating, and when they are rotating by Ziliak, you can see this yellow line. They're cutting into the center of the room to avoid chaining I-beam. So this is the healer rotation if you want to see exactly where you're supposed to be on every mark.
I'm glad that's not complicated at all.
It's pretty straightforward if
It's
you
not
We'll
bad.
make a one. We'll just have a 3 system, so you know every third you go.
I know. I mean,
Super
man.
easy.
Except for the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the only time that, yeah.
it's very this will tell you exactly where you need to be at all times. Healer 1 starts at Mograine. There's 3 healers. If you look all the way down the column, there's 3 healers in every starting position. When the first mark goes out after the first 20 seconds of the fight, they stay at Mograine. Second mark goes out, they move to Thane. You can see the movements highlighted in green. There's 4 healers moving every time. 1 healer at every corner. Mark 3 goes out, they stay at Thane. Mark 4 goes out, they stay at Thane. Mark 5 goes out, they move to Blow Me. Mark 6, they stay. Mark 7, they stay. Mark 8, they move. Mark 9, stay. Mark 10, stay. Mark 11, move. Mark 12, move. Or Mark 12, stay. And then you wrap back around to the beginning. And, it goes on and on. If you take this table here and you put Kobe is healer 1, Choir is healer 2, Ginger is healer 3, Sexecution is healer 4. You can have each healer assigned to a corner, and they can all see exactly where they're supposed to be going every rotation. And you don't need to know where everyone else is or what everyone else is doing. You can just follow your row all the way across and know where you're supposed to be. So that is the healer rotation. 3 at a corner, 4 healers move every mark, 1 healer at each corner, and they're just constantly rotating around the room in order to make sure that they never obtain an unmanageable amount of marks. So tanks. The tanks are going to be divided into 2 teams of 4. Team 1 is going to tank Mograine and Thane, and they should have a bit of fire resist gear on. Team 2 is going to tank Blow Me and Zeliek. The first 4 tanks are going to go in and pick up their horsemen, and they're going to pull them to the 4 corners of the room. Once the bosses are in position, you've got 20 seconds to get them in position. Marks will start going out every 12 seconds. The remaining 4 tanks are going to just wait in the safe spot until 3 marks have gone out. It's going to take about a minute before you get to do anything. Once the 3rd mark goes out, the tanks in the safe spot are going to run to their assigned boss, and they're going to taunt. If the taunt misses, they're just going to hang out until taunt's off cooldown, and they're going to taunt again, and then the tank that they're relieving is going to leave and go back to the safe spot. Once 3 more marks go out, the tanks in the safe spot are going to go to the opposite boss that they haven't tanked yet. The one thing to remember is that Thane has a meteor. So when the tank is going to get Thane, they have to make sure that they are moving with the DPS and they're staying as a unit as they move in. And when the off tank who's tanking leaves, they leave with the DPS that's leaving and going back to the safe zone together, so that nobody gets caught out and meteored. If your tank gets caught alone and meteored, it's pretty much a wipe at that point. You can't let your tanks die on this fight. So here's the strategy and positioning of the tanks. We have tank group 1 and tank group 2, and it operates on the same principle. Tank 1-1 is going to start at Thane. Tank 1-2 is going to start at Mograine. Tank 1-3 is in safe spot, and tank 4 is in the safe spot. After 3 marks go out, tank 1 and tank 2 return to the safe spot, and tank 3 and tank 4 go pick up Thane and Mograine. Once 3 more marks go out, tank 1, who was tanking Thane, is going to go get Mograine. This is because the marks from Thane haven't fallen off yet. And tank 2 is going to go get Thane. And then they're going to return to the safe spot. And then they're going to, the off tanks are going to do the same switch. So you are going to be tanking 2 of the Horsemen, and you're going to be rotating every cycle who you're tanking. Same thing with Blomy and Ziliak, just in a different corner of the room. So if you follow, your tank assignments, you have Moist, Asylum, Gold, Kalane, Bronca, Demonify. You list out all your tanks, and they know exactly where they're supposed to be after every set of marks, and you just rinse and repeat until your bosses are dead. DPS is very similar to the tanks. You're going to be divided into 4 teams of 5. Doesn't really matter how many people are on a team as long as everybody knows which team they're on. The first bosses that have to die are Mograine and Thane. On the pull, Team 1 and the first tank are going to move in together to soak the meteor damage. Team 2 is going to begin DPS on Mograine, and Team 3 and 4 are going to wait in the safe spot. Team 1 can leave Thane and head to the safe spot once Team 3 has arrived with the new off tank, and you just repeat that until Thane and Mograine are dead. Once you are killing Blomy and Ziliak, only the ranged are going to kill Ziliak. You can outrange his I-beam. There's no reason for the melee to even go in, because they will get I-beamed and massacred. So the ranged will kill Ziliak, the melee will kill Blomy, and the fight becomes much simpler once these other 2 horsemen are dead, and everyone's kind of going to be responsible for getting into the safe spot and letting their marks fall off. They have relatively low health, but again, the shield wall will keep them alive. So you're going to keep your rotation going, and again, the rotation for the DPS is very similar to the tank rotation, except it's groups instead of individuals. So you'll need to make sure your group is following the rotation and going from spot to spot back and forth. At the start of the fight, the DPS are only going to be rotating to Mograine and Thane. You just completely ignore Blomy and Ziliak until Mograine and Thane are dead. So that's 4 Horsemen. If it sounds complicated, I promise you it will become much more clear once we're actually in there and rotating. If you have questions about these guys, feel free to ask me. I will answer whatever questions you got.
I did have one quick one for
just let me finish the thought. Hold on. Just what I would say is don't worry about what the other people are supposed to be doing. Worry about your specific role. So if you're DPS, focus on DPS. If you're healer, focus on healers, and really try to learn what the healers are supposed to be doing. All right. Question?
Yeah, for the healers, do we continue the same rotation to all 4 corners after the first 2 bosses die, or will we cut
once the first 2 bosses die, you can kind of split yourselves evenly between the 2 corners, and then just get into the safe spot once you get too many marks. Those bosses should die relatively quickly. We may want to kind of do a 3-group rotation where there's 4 groups of or 3 groups of 4 healers, and they go from safe spot to Blomy to Ziliak and around the room like that. Though Ziliak and Blomy have about half as much health as the rest of the other 2, so they should go down much more quickly.
Renor,
really,
I got a question, Renor.
yeah.
Do I have to kiss all 4 horsemen?
I knew you were gonna say
Yeah,
some dumb kissing shit.
Yes, you do, and you have to kiss their horses too.
Oh, that 8 whole kisses? I gotta get my cooldown.
Oh yeah. All right.
I gotta get rapid fire going.
So
do the melee eat more marks once just the 2 of them if they're not going in